Hi everyone, my name is Sreeja Sengupta and I am a final year student at the West Bengal National University of Juridical Sciences. I am a faculty at CLAT for logical reasoning. And with me, I have our very own CLAT student, Sanyam, who was AIR ranked 43 and is now a second year student at NUJS and is also the faculty for general knowledge at CLAT. So today we are going to be discussing some frequently asked questions regarding the CLAT entrance exam. So let's start with the most basic question, Sayam. What is the CLAT exam?
So CLAT, which is the Common Law Admission Test, is essentially an entrance exam for national law universities, commonly referred to as NLUs. NLUs essentially are autonomous institutes established by states. There are total 22 NLUs which have come together to form the consortium of NLUs which conducts CLAT annually. Apart from these 22 NLUs, there's also another NLU called NLU Delhi, that is National Law University Delhi, which conducts its own separate exam called All India Law Entrance Test, commonly known as and referred to as ALIT.
So now that we know what the CLAT exam is and what other law entrance exams there are for getting into national law universities, let's take a look at what the pattern for the CLAT paper is, right? So till before 2020, CLAT used to be a 200 mark exam and it had five sections, which was English, general knowledge, logical reasoning, legal reasoning, and quantitative aptitude. While the sections have remained the same, there has been a shift in the pattern 2020 onwards. And why don't you tell us a little bit about this new pattern, Sayam?
So post 2020, the total number of questions have been cut down from 200 to 150. Although the breakup of the five sections are still the same, that is, quantitative technique forms 10% of the paper, logical reasoning 20, English 20%, legal reasoning and general knowledge 25% each. However, there has been a shift in the type of questions which we face now. So before 2020, your questions were purely objective, and instead of having, let's say, passage-based questions, you had one single questions as a unit for each mark, and there were 200 questions in total. However, now you have a mix of subjective and objective questions. So let's say you have one paragraph to deal with, out of which you have seven questions stemming out from that same paragraph. This major change has been primarily in legal, GK, and logical reasoning question. So the thing you have to keep an eye out for, and this goes out to all the candidates, is that there's a lot of content and a lot of practice material available online and freely circulated too. However, 70% of this content is still based on the objective type of questions which were followed pre 2020. It is advisable that the papers or the material you practice conforms to the new pattern, which is a mix of subjective and objective questions and is paragraph based.
Right. So coming to the mode in which the examination is conducted, I mean, CLAT has had a history of having a mix of having an online exam some years and then having an offline exam for some years. So what would you say about the 2022 examination and what students should look out for?
I mean, the propensity of having an offline exam in 2022 is way more than an online exam. However, there has been a tendency of shifting from online to offline. For example, 2019 was a pen and paper based offline paper. However, 2020 was again an online paper, and 2021 pen and paper based paper. However, the consortium has a tendency of relying towards offline papers, and in all probability, this year, that is 2022 onwards, we'll still see the pen paper based physical paper.
That's good to know. So I think the students will be expecting an offline exam for 2022. So now let's get down to the brass tacks with respect to the application process for CLAT and the qualifications that are required for the examination.
So the CLAT applications are out. They were out on the 1st of January 2022. The applications will stay live till 31st of March 2022. The tentative dates of CLAT exam is 8th of May 2022. The qualifications are as follows. There's no upper age limit in the undergraduate program for CLAT 2022. The minimum percentage that is a candidate has to secure for PWD quota, general OBC, and NRI quota is at 45%. However, the students were appearing for 10 plus 2 equivalent examination. they and are appearing for the same exam in, let's say, March, April of 2022, they are still eligible for CLAT 2022. You don't need to have the passing certificate and the mark sheet while applying for CLAT. However, while the admission process goes on, you have to produce your results uh, along with the documents you submit, which states that you have secured more than the minimum percentage required, that is 45%, to secure a seat in one of these NLUs. However, one important thing which aspirants should notice, that for the 2023 CLAT, which was supposed to happen in 2023, this exam will be conducted in December of 2022 itself, instead of let's say May of 2023.
Right. With respect to the other entrance exams for the NLUs, which is NLU Delhi, which has a separate entrance exam, as Sanyam mentioned, ILET, the application has been open since January 1st week. There's no last date for registration mentioned as yet. The exam is set to be conducted on 1st May 2022. Also, from this year onwards, the National Law School of India University, Bangalore, has announced a 3-year LLB program which students can opt for after a graduation course. More details about this program will be revealed on the NLS website. So far, what has been mentioned is that the last date for application for the entrance exam, the NLS SAT, is the 26th of March 2022, and the examination date will be 24th April 2022. So now, after knowing about the technicalities of the exams and the pattern of the paper, let's get down to the details of the examination itself and the most important aspect of which is the preparation for the CLAT examination. So, given that there are only 5 months left for the CLAT examination, what would you say is a good preparation strategy, Sayed?
So, for any candidate who's just starting out their preparation, I would suggest to start with the last year papers, that is the previous year papers and the sample papers as well, which have been provided by CLAT Consortium. What I essentially mean is that the new pattern have two papers, that is 2020 paper and 2021 paper. However, the consortium released three sample papers in 2020 and similarly a couple of sample papers in 2021. So it forms around 7-8 papers, which essentially give you an idea of what type of questions you'll be facing, what exactly will be the pattern, and what you need to prepare for, what you need to keep an eye out for. Apart from that, also the previous year papers of CLATs, which was of previous pattern, are also very helpful because they give you a fair share of idea about how tough the paper can be and how exactly the sources of examiners are and how exactly the type of questions are framed. Apart from this, a candidate can obviously register for an institute. There are various institutes out there, crash courses, etc., are all available. But however, the primary difference which the candidates must keep an eye out for is the online and offline practice and the material these coaching institutes are offering. So, if your material conforms to the new pattern, if you can have online and offline practice both available for you, so that you can shift, let's say, from offline to online if COVID pandemic goes a bit worse, let's say, or and then you can again shift back to offline preparation when things stabilize. These are the things which students should keep in mind and start preparing accordingly.
That's good to know. So now let's talk about the materials that can be referred to by students, right? One of the most frequently asked questions with regards to the books and the online materials that students can refer to with respect to the particular subject-wise preparation. So let's start off with GK, which is your forte, Saya.
So GK essentially is divided into two aspects. First is static GK and then is dynamic GK. So dynamic GK keeps on changing. So every day there is a new development which you have to keep track and follow. So there are no specific books for it. However, you can obviously subscribe to monthly current affair magazines and newspapers. I personally used to rely on multiple newspapers. I used to follow 3, 4 newspapers. However, it is advisable that you follow at least one national daily every single day. Make notes out of it. And for static GK, essentially, NCRT history books or let's say loosened GK books are enough for static, is what I'll say.
Right. Coming to logical reasoning, the preparatory materials that can be referred to are verbal and non-verbal reasoning by R.S. Agarwal. However, it is very important to kind of realize that there has been a shift in the pattern. So, like previously, there used to be a demarcated number of questions which used to be from critical reasoning, and then a number of questions from analytical reasoning under the logical reasoning segment. Now there is a more or less almost heavy dominance by the critical reasoning questions in the logic section. And therefore, in order to prepare for the critical reasoning questions, it is also advised to look at the GMAT preparatory materials and the question papers, because they help in answering the passage based questions that can come. It is also advised to be reading newspaper op-eds, which are a good source of, building your speed in reading passages, because now, like Sayam said, the paper has become very passage based and very heavy on reading. Around 400 to 500 word passages are given, and then five or more questions follow from there. Coming to English section, obviously the most used book for improving your vocabulary is Word Power Made Easy by Norman Lewis, and it has a very extensive word list towards the end of the book, which is actually very helpful in building up your vocabulary. And with respect to the syntax and grammar portion of English, the holy grail of all English books, Wren and Martin is the most advisable. And with respect to the reading comprehension passages, and again, the passage based questions similar to logical reasoning, again, the GMAT preparatory materials should be referred to kind of have an idea. Similarly, the op-ed portions of newspapers should also be read daily to kind of build the reading speed and to promote eclectic reading. Coming to the quantitative aptitude section, again, like the previous year's papers used to have a lot more straightforward questions, there has been a shift towards data interpretation questions in the new CLAT pattern. With respect to preparation for this section, with the basic topics and the basic concepts can be addressed in books like ML Agarwal, Mathematics, and Quantitative Aptitude by R.S. Agarwal. On the other hand, you can also refer to CAT preparatory materials by Arun Sharma with respect to the quantitative aptitude portion. And finally, coming to the legal portion, Sayam, would you tell us what preparatory materials to look at?
So legal again is a very dynamic section in the sense that previously there were used to be principle-based questions and they used to set a follow a set norm. However, the current pattern is more dynamic, so you have changing concepts and more recent topics included in the paper. So obviously, solving as many questions from as many sources is helpful. Going through the previous papers is helpful, but to clear out basic legal concepts of, let's say, torts and contracts and IPC, etc., AP Bharadwaj's legal aptitude book is a must. Apart from that, solving as many papers and as many mocks is going to be the key for legal reasoning.
Absolutely. So now that brings us to the more fundamental question of how to prepare for CLAT, right? The strategy of how to prepare, whether you have board exams alongside your CLAT examination, or whether you're taking a drop year and you don't have board exams, what should be the way in which you prepare for the CLAT entrance examination? So why don't you start off, Sayam, and I'll join you right after.
So I personally took a drop year for CLAT. My daily routine used to be slightly different because I did not have to worry about both. So I used to dedicate around 6 to 7 hours a day for CLAT preparation, which included, 2 to 3 hours of current affairs, a mock, and generally that's all. Maybe solving a few questions on the topics I personally felt were lacking. But then again, preparation is something which is very individualistic. So let's say if you have boards, the bare minimum I'll suggest is 2 plus 1 hours. Two, because CLAT generally takes 2 hours, and if you build up this practice of engaging with CLAT material for at least 2 plus 1 hours, that is 3 hours, on the day of CLAT, you won't feel as tense or let's say as out of concentration as you should be. That being said, again, it's not necessary that you solve every single subject every single day. You can strategize, obviously. So taking up one subject a day, or let's say one subject every 2 days, is going to be helpful if you have boards to manage, obviously.
Right. So, since I did have board examinations alongside my CLAT examination, so I think what really worked was, like Sayam was saying, giving a bare minimum of 2 plus 1 hours to preparation. That is non-negotiable. But apart from that, you need to realize you need to maintain a schedule in order to kind of factor in your schoolwork alongside your CLAT preparation. Maintaining a schedule is very important so that you can increase the hours of your CLAT preparation when your school work is light and when you don't have examinations. but at the same time you can reduce it a little bit when your examinations are near, or when you have, on the days on which you have exams itself. What is the most important factor is that while your exams are extremely important and your schoolwork should not be neglected at any cost, at the same time you should never go out of touch with your CLAT prep. You should never put it on a break. You should never give it a complete break, because then you will get out of practice and you will not be able to improve your scores in your mock tests, right? So that's why it's very important to kind of manage the hours that you're putting into along with your schoolwork. And the best way to do that is to kind of come up with a comprehensive schedule. And like Sanyam was saying, you don't have to do all subjects every day of the week. You can pick up one or two subjects and thoroughly do the subtopics. Another very important aspect is that current affairs is something that needs to be done every day over and above your general practice. So, say for example, if you're starting off by devoting 2 hours per day to your CLAT preparation, you should have an additional 30 minutes to 1 hour of time dedicated to your GK prep, to your current affairs, whether that's reading the newspaper cover to cover, or whether that's relying on online, news sites. So, current affairs, because you need to be updated with it all the time, and you have a 1 year cycle of from where your questions come from. That's why it's very important to kind of do that preparation alongside and every single day without missing out. So I think that's with respect to the preparation. Coming to some of the additional materials that can be referred to, apart from the physical materials that Sayam and I were talking about, which are books which are available in hard copies and soft copies as well, a lot of online materials are also quite helpful. So YouTube videos, for example, on particular topics and subtopics, especially for subjects like the analytical part of logical reasoning or quantitative aptitude, can be very very sorry, can be very very helpful. But it is very important to kind of not go down the rabbit hole of YouTube videos and look up things which are irrelevant. So stick to your topic when you are looking at YouTube videos. On the other hand, you can also look at various websites catered to preparation and some online quizzes that you can practice for subject wise preparation. So there is India Bix for your logical reasoning and your quantitative aptitude. There is Merriam Webster for vocabulary practice. And there are online sites like GK Today and Jagran Josh, which have daily, weekly, and monthly GK tests as well. So now, Sayam, let's come to the big question of mocks. How frequently to take it? What are they? Why should we do them at all?
So mocks essentially help you gauge your preparation level, and essentially they are the whole package of CLAT in its one go. What do we mean by that? Instead of preparing 5 different sections at 5 different points of time and solving multiple worksheets, you sit down for 2 hours and you have 5 sections exactly at CLAT level in CLAT pattern, which you solve to determine how well your preparation is going and relatively how well you're performing to others. This is exactly why mocks are very important. But apart from that, the frequency of mocks. So writing less mocks is always more is going to be exactly more fatal than, let's say, overdoing it, right? So some people might write way too many mocks, but that's still acceptable because you at least grow out of it. What I would suggest is to divide it into 3 parts. In your initial phase, you don't need to write a mock every day or every alternate day. Let's say 2 to 3 mocks per week is sufficient in the first few days, first few weeks of your preparation. Once you have grown a bit, once you have started preparing a bit better, once you are in flow, 1 mock every alternate day, or let's say 4 or 5 mocks per week is something you should aim at. And when CLAT is extremely near, you have, let's say, 1.5 months left, a mock every day or even 2 mocks a day is something which you should aim at. However, writing mocks is not the end of it. After writing the mock, analyzing them becomes very important. So there are 2 things which you need to keep in mind. Firstly, don't look at scores as an absolute term and get, either over motivated or under motivated because of that. Because every mock is at its own level, every mock will be difficult or easier. So your marks may vary. What you need to focus is on your percentile and rank. With every mock, every candidate should try to better their rank and their percentile. And if that is going well, it means your mocks are actually going well. After every mock, give the time every question requires, analyze and understand where you are lacking. That is how you build out of a mock, right? The more you analyze, the better you understand, the better you perform in the next mock.
Absolutely. And I think one of the most important things for students to realize is that there is no right time when you're ready to take a mock. If you keep waiting for when your syllabus gets over, that You think, oh, once I've completed everything and I know everything there is to know about the CLAT exam, then I'll take a mock. That's not the right approach, because by then it might be too late. It might be too close to your CLAT entrance exam, right? So it is very, very important to take mocks early on and to get rid of the fear of the mock, because it is not something which you do after your preparation. It is something which you do along with your preparation. It is, in fact, one of the most essential aspects of your preparation. And like Sayam was saying, analysis of a mock is probably the most important part of the mock. It is maybe perhaps more important than the mock itself. And in an analysis, what you need to essentially do is that you need to figure out the areas in which you went wrong, analyze the areas where your weakness is in, and figure out how to do a strength and weakness analysis, and you try to improve the areas in which you're not being able to do as well. And when you analyze the mocks, you need to keep note of how of where you're going wrong, such as whether it is in speed, or whether it is with respect to accuracy, or whether it is with respect to both. Since the CLAT exam has negative marking, it is not a wise decision to sort of attempt questions on a whim or just do guesswork. That's why it is very important to kind of improve your accuracy along with your speed. And if any one of them is lacking, you need to practice till you improve both to the same level. So that's with respect to mocks and their analysis. Sayam, would you have any additional tips for the aspirants?
Yeah. So firstly, because of the pandemic and everything, a lot of students have neglect these few things. Firstly, start shifting to center pressure, start adjusting to it. What that essentially means is that if you just write CLAT once, that is on the final day of the exam, there's a tendency of students to have this performance anxiety or performance pressure, which is very, very natural. To get it done away with, writing a lot of competitive exams, even simulating the mock environment as close to CLAT helps a lot. That might look like, competing with your friends, going to coaching centers and writing mocks. If that is not available, even in your own home, you can simulate the environment. That should do. That should be one thing you should focus on. Secondly, strategize your preparation. Obviously, if you are very good at a certain subject, don't waste time on it, because it's a competitive exam. You need to score better than the others. Start working on your weak points rather than on your advantages. Finally, enjoy the process. If you actually start enjoying the process becomes way more easier. It is easier said than done for competitive exams, but a lot of people do enjoy the process, and that is where this becomes extremely easy. All the best to everyone.
That's great. Sayam, one last question, which I think we didn't touch upon before, but when we're talking about mocks, what would you say, where do you find these mocks, or what would you recommend for mock test series?
Oh, yes, definitely. So there are a lot of mocks and there are a lot of coaching institutes offering mocks freely and paid available online, right? So the thing is, you can take any mock series from any institute or even avail the free mocks available. However, there are 2 points distinctly which you need to keep in mind. First, a lot of mocks don't confirm with the current pattern. Only if the institute is offering you mock series which confirms to the current pattern properly is you should take that mock series. If it doesn't, don't waste your time, I'll say, on those mock series. Secondly, the student base that is writing the mock. So let's say if you subscribe to a mock series or you start taking mocks from, let's say, XYZ source, if that mock series has a lot of students writing that paper, you get a ranking and you get a relative percentile to actually gauge your performance. If only few students or it's just you is writing that mock, you'll get an absolute term, but you won't get a rank or a relative percentile, and hence the process becomes way, way tougher. So keep these two things in mind before taking up any mock series or from any mock institutes.
Absolutely. So I think that brings us to the end of our discussion. All the best to all the aspirants. That's all for today then.